Hey everybody, welcome to the IoT Minute. I'm Rob Tiffany. Got a somber note today. We've got a real big security problem, and it's such a big deal. I worry that it could potentially kind of bring our whole world of IoT to its knees. I know that sounds like super exaggerated, but let's talk about it. You may have heard in the news about something called Meltdown and Spectre. Affecting the CPUs, the processors on your computer. And you may have heard things that it goes back to 1995. Basically, what we're talking about here, and I'm going to break these things down for you and talk about how it affects normal PCs and also how it affects IoT devices, embedded systems. At a high level, they're both kind of breaking down the barriers, kind of the memory isolation barriers between apps. So Spectre, which is the one that affects ARM, Intel, AMD processors, Spectre kind of breaks down that isolation between apps so that one app running in its process could trick another app into revealing its secrets out of its memory. So not good there. Meltdown is the other one. This one's, as far as we know, is just isolated to Intel processors. But going back to 1995, do you remember what you were doing in 1995? You were running Windows 95, right? You're probably still running Windows 3.1, actually. Meltdown, it also breaks down isolation, but it breaks it down between apps and the operating system itself, the kernel. And so in this case, the attacking app, accesses memory and secrets from other apps or the operating system itself. This is all bad stuff. This is something, though, that's been reported, and, as bad as it is, I think most people are thinking, yeah, this is horrible. It affects my PCs, my desktops, my laptops, my tablets, cloud servers, things like that. So again, if it's Spectre that's running across Intel, AMD, and ARM, yeah, it's hitting laptops, desktops, clouds, tablets, smartphones, and embedded systems. If it's Meltdown, then right now, we think it's just Intel. And so that kind of reduces it a little bit, desktop, laptop, cloud, embedded, things running Intel CPUs. There are some patches out there that are kind of streaming out from operating system vendors, like Microsoft with Windows, Mac from Apple, different Linux variations to come out. The thing about that, they're not necessarily, they're a patch to hopefully, be a workaround. The negative side about these patches, though, is they're reported, and again, this is reported, everything varies, but anywhere between 5 to maybe up to a 30% performance hit on your computing device by putting on these patches. So this patch there to save you from breaking the isolation of these memory boundaries also negatively impacts the performance. Negatively impacts specifically like file I/O, network I/O, things like that. But of course, this is a big deal. This means your cloud servers are getting slower. All your servers, anything you're doing on your desktop. If it's lightweight stuff, you might not notice. If it's heavy workloads, yeah, you're absolutely going to notice this kind of stuff. So this is kind of where we're at. All the reporting is really around, the billions of PCs, laptops, tablets, smartphones that are affected by this. What's not really been talked about is how it affects this other world that a bunch of us live in, this embedded IoT, embedded control systems world, machine-to-machine world. It doesn't get as much press in the San Francisco Bay Area tech media outlets, right? But I want to make sure that you feel the gravity of how this also affects this other world, the world that you don't see, that's all around you. And it could be a devastating impact. Why is that? Because on the one hand, while you can get a patch, and hopefully patch your system, your laptop, even if it slows it down, other systems, these little embedded control systems that you associate with IoT and machine-to-machine, they're not easily updatable. Some are really hard to update. Some are almost never updated. You access them. Some, if it's newer IP-based stuff, they can be updated more easily, kind of like mobile device management, except for doing it for IoT. Others, you may have to update it via RS-232 ports or, stuff that's pretty old school, where you have to really have physical access to it. So you've got systems that are harder to update are all running these same types of processors. I know you think they run some magical other kind of processor because they're tiny and little, but you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how long Intel kept shipping 386 and 486 processors. You may have quit using them on your PC, but they were great for tiny embedded systems. Even though you think most of them run on ARM these days, you'd be surprised. So there's all kinds of systems that you can't see that are all around us that could be negatively impacted by this Spectre and Meltdown attack on chips. Let me give you a few examples. Think of medical devices. All kinds of medical devices that are computer controlled, you know, EKGs, pumps, you know, for insulin. There's so many. Think about the last time you walked through a hospital. All the systems are running on some kind of compute. Guess what? It's Intel, AMD, or ARM. So those things can be impacted. We know the downside of that, right? Your ATM machines. Boy, wouldn't it really be a bummer if someone found out your password on your on the ATM machines when you're trying to get money out, or did a little switcheroo on your account numbers. Not good. Network routers and switches. The whole internet is powered by all these routers and switches, routing packets around. The same stuff that's in your private network, in your company, or at your school, the whole open internet. All these things are, again, they're not being run with some magical processors you've never heard of. It's the same ones. Those can be affected. Those can be snooped and found out what's going on through there. Factory control systems, powering assembly lines, air traffic control systems, positive train control systems for long distance trains or metro systems that are keeping those things safe. Street lights coming on and off. Maybe your stoplights, you know, red, yellow, green. All those things are controlled by computers. HVAC systems, your heating and control systems for skyscrapers and other buildings. Security systems, locks, automatic locks coming on and off. The list is almost endless. I know the average person has no idea how tiny compute hidden in walls and in basements and places are running so many systems all around us. But it's true. And they're almost all affected by this. Will they be harder to exploit because they're harder to get to? Sure. Well, in the security business, we always talk about the folly of security through obscurity. And somebody will get away with some of this because of that obscurity, or they're hard to get to. You know, hackers will go after the easier, the IP-based stuff. But that doesn't mean they're not vulnerable. So what's the takeaway here? All these systems have to be updated. All of them do. Which is going to be a monumental task. You know, you think the billions of PCs and laptops and tablets and smartphones is a tall order? How about the tens of billions of IoT embedded devices, control systems that are really hard to update? The ones that are easier to update with IP, you know, they can use IoT platforms that have that command and control capability to update those platforms can update those systems, remotely update the firmware, things like that. But lots of them, it's really hard to get. You know, again, you might be taking a terminal up to a device and connecting through RS-232 or some other thing, or USB, or who knows, to update it. There's no real cure here. There's a fix, there's a workaround, there's a patch. The actual only true fix is replacing the chips. You can probably laugh at that for a moment and think of the billions of chips out there and the idea of, I've got to replace all my chips. It sounds crazy, but it's actually the only way to be sure. And again, you know, you got the Project Zero folks at Google and other people at universities who discovered this in the wild. It doesn't mean there's not other stuff out there that hasn't been discovered yet. They just discovered these vulnerabilities. Who knows what's out there. Anyway, this is pretty tough stuff. People are already super paranoid around IoT as it is around security. You know, we saw a couple of years ago, you know, the denial of service attack on DNS servers by taking control of IoT devices and simple devices because they weren't secured. Well, we've got a whole new attack surface open up. The hackers are never sleeping. Individual hackers, hacker organizations, state-sponsored hackers, which is a big deal. Those guys are never sleeping. We just made it a whole lot easier for them to wreak havoc on everybody. And it's going to be not just your servers and laptops. It's going to be everything. So anyway, here's your warning shot. Get ready. Buckle up. Hold on tight. It's going to be a tough time. I'm out.